Welcome to the DevReady podcast. Joining me on the DevReady podcast today, I have Kaia R. Parv. Thanks for joining me, Kaia.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. How's it going?
It's a pleasure. I can do a small intro for yourself because I know we've worked together at a startup in Singapore or a Fintech called CreditLink.
Yeah.
And I thought we'll get you on the episode. You're starting a new chapter, and I don't know much else about you beyond what I learned from that section, so I'll let you take care of the rest because I will destroy your story.
Cool. Thank you for that, Anthony. As you mentioned, Anthony, we have a bit of a background. We worked together at CreditLink.ai, a Singapore-based fintech startup. Your role there was as the CTO. My role there was the CIO. And what we did effectively at CreditLink, we built technology infrastructure with the focus of enabling small and medium-sized businesses to have easier access to credit. Prior to that, I spent about a decade, a bit more, in different roles within the financial services. So I started in Singapore with Bank of America Merrill Lynch, had different roles from operations, technology, and then moved to the front office, investment banking and corporate banking, and also spent a bit of time in buy side, which is the asset management world, hedge fund world, as well as on the FX brokerage. You see where I'm going with this. So I've had quite lateral experience covering different angles of the industry. But that has been really beneficial in my view, meaning that I've gotten different perspectives, different roles, different regulators, different geographies even within my portfolio.
Yeah, it'd be similar but varied as you go, and then you're probably building on the knowledge of one to the other. You didn't go from the extreme left to the extreme right of the industry straight away, so you've hopped along the way. What got you started in this industry?
What got me started? I mean, that's a great question. I think it was a bit of a pull, if you will, in terms of education. So I finished, we graduated from Estonian Business School. There wasn't much to do in Estonia back in 2011. We were still suffering from the financial crisis. As a fresh graduate, you want to do something exciting. You want to see the world. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try moving to this place called Singapore, where I've never been before, never been to Asia before. And having a finance-related degree wasn't pure finance. That sort of pushed me towards banking/asset management. And I was very lucky that Singapore was quite welcoming towards foreigners at the time. So it was easy to get a work pass. It was quite easy to find a job. I don't think that's the case anymore. So I think the world has become much more insular, at least in 2024.
Yeah, I think Singapore's gone through tremendous growth from the early 2000s to 2010s. I know just the dollar was way different compared to Singapore versus Aussie dollar.
Correct.
And now it's the other way around. It's a complete shift.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think, that's the government trying to bring people in like yourself and develop an economy there, and that seems to have taken off in spades.
Yeah, no, Singapore government always, I feel they are playing chess when maybe some other governments are playing checkers, just figuring out how to get the next 4 years done. But they really have the benefit of being able to think long term and being more strategic, thinking what type of talent they want. And we can talk about, the context of lateral experience/fractional job in Singapore context as well later, because I think it's quite applicable.
Yeah. So having that varied career, did you on purpose move laterally sideways across role to role, or was it just an opportunity arose and you thought, all right, let me just take that because there's something in front of me?
A bit of both, I would say. So I was exposed to the concept of lateral work quite early in my career. But I wouldn't say that I chose my role with the intent that, I'm going to add a new lateral experience. It was rather along the way that, opportunity has come about. Let's say, for instance, when I was working in the back office at Bank of America, I realized the job wasn't really for me. It was very structured, very standard operating procedure driven, very routine. It was great to a point, but when you do exactly the same thing every single day, it gets a bit laborious, a bit boring, at least for me. And there are people who enjoy that. It just didn't fit my sort of personality. And when opportunity came to join the investment banking team, it wasn't really like, I really want to do investment banking, but it was more like, I see growth opportunity. And that's really important for me, Anthony, and has been throughout my career. Where I see growth, what is something I can acquire that expands my skill set, maybe my network, and also just understanding of the industry.
And that's important to have that growth, that mindset, because otherwise, like you said, there are some people who are happy to just do that sort of remedial work, for lack of a better term, and just repeat the same thing without having to think, and they just go home, and that's the job. But then, there are people that want to push and grow and try different things.
And that's completely okay. I mean, people have different preferences, different skill sets. But one thing we can also discuss during the podcast is why specializing and getting really good at something may not be a good long-term strategy anymore. And we see a lot of automation of tasks, jobs. So I think our generation, or maybe generation even after us, don't have the benefit of specializing or the luxury of specializing.
Yeah, I think that specializing, that really narrowing down and becoming the expert in your field that's more probably targeted towards when you're sort of an employee. When you're running your own business, you sort of have to be a little bit of a jack of all trades to be able to handle everything that gets thrown at you.
Absolutely. But even when you work for a company, we are seeing major shifts in the workplace. I mean, initially, maybe we started seeing offshoring of certain roles, and that was something that took place while I was with Bank of America. A lot of jobs were moved from Singapore, which was then the service center of Asia, to India.
Yep.
And that obviously was scary for people based in Singapore, but now the same roles in India are not moved anywhere else. They're being automated. So it is a shift, and it happens in every layer of the sort of society. Every vertical is getting impacted. So I think people who are maybe born after 1990, and I'm going to choose just an arbitrary date here, really have to be mindful what type of career they choose, what type of skill set they acquire, and they have to be comfortable with being a chameleon. That's what I see myself. I'm a chameleon, and you have to be comfortable with changing your skill set in every maybe 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, and that's something that people are not comfortable with generally, is having change forced upon them or wanting to change and then be, all right, now I'm tackling this phase of my career, let's go for these skills. It's more, this is what I'm familiar with, this is what I'm comfortable with. Exactly. And then they stick with it. So you do need to challenge yourself like that. And from my experience, having run a business for almost 17 years now, everything's changing all the time.
Yeah.
And we're constantly trying to change things to make it better. We still haven't found the golden ticket. So you're just always going to be trying. But that's, if you don't do it, you're going to die. If you're in a normal job, you'll just be stuck there. There's a difference there.
I agree, Anthony. And would you say, and my observation is such that after a certain time, the context may be different, but the sort of the skill you have to apply is the same. Do you observe the same within your organization as well?
For sort of like the problem solving side? Yes, you're just solving different problems, but you have more context to make a decision with. But it's also more, the skill set stays the same. So, you get changes in the skill set. So as I've done, we've started as a developer because we had to do the work. There was no one else. But then I moved up a role. So then I'm overseeing projects. Yeah. Now I'm designing them, not overseeing them. And then now with our new product, I'm just focusing on sort of like the marketing side. So I'm just trying to learn that because we never really did that before. So there's different skills, but along the way, there's my problem solving, there's my research skills. Exactly. That's come along all the way to try and pick it up. So that's where it does apply. Yeah,
I feel exactly the same, like almost becomes like a full circle in terms of applying yourself or applying some sort of skill set. But I would say it's important to learn how to think, how to analyze, and how to structure a problem. And in my view, this is almost the most important skill that any young person can acquire this day and age.
Yeah, and I think that's what I got taught when I was at uni, was how to learn, not anything else. Because the programming I was taught there was already 10, 20 years old. So it doesn't help you in industry. It's more how to learn and how to be autonomous to try and to get to your goal. Yeah,
spot on.
So touching on that point where you mentioned things getting outsourced to India or other countries, and it's true that those people are not outsourced. The India is not outsourcing those tasks, or another company is not outsourcing to a cheaper country anymore as they become more developed because of the sort of the commoditization of like AI and services and tools. So how do you see, how have you seen that shift happen? Because it's been relatively recent. Say ChatGPT 2 years ago was probably the big marker in everyone's mind, but there's years of AI build up before that.
I don't think that the major shift or the transition has happened yet. I think that a lot of the companies are preparing. For instance, I do a bit of, let's call it AI consultancy, and by no means I am an AI expert, but what I've done is I've really familiarized myself using certain tools, and I have seen the efficiency or sort of the saving of time from using those tools. So I do help few companies, why won't you maybe use this tool? Why won't you use that tool? And they notice also the productivity increase. Suddenly, the marketing person has 20% more time available, or maybe the copywriter has more time, maybe the developer has a bit more time. And I think it takes a bit of momentum for this shift to happen. And at some point, the companies probably are going to start laying off people. And since I also monitor, observe, follow American stock exchange, American markets, US markets, I listen to earnings calls, which is every quarter there's earning announcement. You listen to CEOs, CFOs talking about their forward-looking projections. And that is one element that they keep emphasizing. Of course, they don't talk, we're going to lay off people. They talk about expanding margins and increasing productivity and having higher efficiency and these type of things, which effectively mean the same thing. At some point, we're going to have to lay off some people because we don't need them anymore. So my answer to the question is a bit long, but I guess the point I'm trying to make hasn't happened yet, but it will happen in steps gradually over the next few years.
Yeah, definitely. It's early days, and we're seeing some transition. People are getting worried like AI is going to take my job, but it's not going to take a job. It's someone who uses AI will take your job. The person who can now do your job better or faster.
Spot on. Yeah. I think this is the best description when talking about the AI momentum.
And I think with those larger companies, it probably is going to more rely on layoffs rather than expanding markets. Because if you're a smaller business, you can now do 20% more with the same people. Yeah. You can try and grab more market share. But when you're at that really large company size, you're a bit more limited in how much you can grow, I think, because you're already in a saturated market normally. So it's hard. So
the best you can do effectively is expand your margins, which is the composition of where you spend your money, whether it's technology, whether it's manual labor, whether it's, human resources, we call it these days. Yeah. So I think the composition will change. But I think also with the adoption of AI and maybe new tools, there's also another layer, which is the fractional jobs, right? Because suddenly you may have a pool of talent available in your company. They're really good at what they do. They're fairly efficient, but there is an option maybe to outsource, get somebody else to come in as a consultant, maybe on a 3 to 6 month project basis. They come with their own technology, give a completely fresh look on the problem with a fresh pair of eyes. And inadvertently, what I've seen is sometimes that is the momentum to get some project going faster, cheaper, more efficiently. So it's two sort of different trends that we can talk about. One of them is the AI, the other one is the sort of fractional job.
And those fractional roles, I'm seeing a large uptick in that sort of fractional consultants coming around recently. And it does make sense from my experience at a smaller company level, because you can't afford either that full-time role yet. You haven't grown to the size to be able to support it. And if you're probably at that larger one, I think, like that injection of fresh ideas, like you mentioned, is going to be very important, because the company has red tape, and it has its layers, it has things are done the way they're done, and people don't challenge them normally.
Absolutely. And in terms of numbers, I think there's been 57% uptick in terms of looking for fractional roles or outsourcing certain tasks. And it comes exactly like you said, smaller companies. And there's one very big opportunity for fractional CXOs, which is startup companies. And startup companies, we can define anything from seed stage even to, let's say, Series C. And for those who are not familiar with venture capital terms, effectively you run through the alphabet. Every next round of funding is a next letter. Normally you stop maybe around F, and then you go public or you get acquired, or some other exit opportunity happens. But within these companies, there is a very clear need to have somebody coming in, not full-time, but coming part-time, maybe doing on a project basis, maybe doing just part-time, maybe, 3, 4, 5 hours every day. And this is a trend that's been growing. There are quite a few platforms in Asia, there are in the US, in Europe as well, that specialize connecting talent with that company that needs fractional headcount.
Yes, it's very different from a normal recruitment firm, because they're just trying to fill a seat. This is just a very specialized person who can come in, lay that expertise out and help you. Do you see that there'll end up being a challenge at some point in the future with the fractional roles, with people not being able to get enough experience in certain roles because they keep moving potentially? This
is one of the biggest bottlenecks and challenges, I would say, is because having or how do you bring in value as a fractional headcount is through expertise and experience, having seen the same problem maybe in different contexts, different companies. I would say that maybe one way how to tackle this is not to do very short-term projects, maybe signing up for a project that takes a year, maybe signing up for a project that's even longer than that. And you can still be sort of part-time role, but I would not overlook the aspect of skill acquisition. In order to be a good fractional headcount, you don't have to be at the C level. You can be just a developer. You can be just a marketing person. You can just be maybe a financial analyst. It's really skill acquisition, making sure that you know what you're doing, and you don't have to be the best. You can be average, because reality check, most people are average at their job. Having a good attitude and doing maybe 1% extra already is the differentiator. And look at the marketplace for talent these days. I mean, you have Fiverr, you have Upwork, amazing talent available there at amazing prices, if you will. I mean, arguably very competitive prices. And I think this is the way how people can bring their skill set to the market, is try putting yourself on these platforms and you get immediate market feedback. How good are you actually?
Yeah, if you're good, your work speaks for itself, and then people end up using you.
Yeah,
I think if you hadn't mentioned sort of like the skill acquisition side, I would have thought that it's more mainly certain types of roles will be suited to a younger generation than older. So you're going to be a CFO, right? You're going to need a lot of experience at a different level to be a fractional CFO. But if you're going to be a digital marketing person, someone's not looking to hire the 60-year-old digital marketing expert.
Exactly.
There's certain roles where it doesn't matter what your sort of perceptions are on the how much experience they have, as long as they can prove their worth. Yeah,
and I also see that opportunities come even in the companies where you maybe be working as a part-time or fractional. I've seen opportunities opening up, full-time positions being offered. So there is a career transition, if you will, into a full-time role, if that's the preference. But again, what I observe post-COVID, there was a massive transition of sort of flexible, autonomous, fractional, digital nomad type of jobs, whatever you want to call it. I mean, same thing, effectively, in different shapes and forms. I see a lot of reluctance among people to go back to the office, having the full-time job, sitting somewhere in a northern hemisphere cold country like Estonia or England or Poland. Like, why would I do that if I can do all of these things being in Thailand or maybe being in Australia or being in, I don't know, Mexico? So I think it's a shift. It's a mental shift. It's a requirement shift. We don't need to be in the office from 9 to 5. That's such an industrial era legacy that we still have to carry. Even the school system is basically adjusted to that industrial era 9 to 5.
It's the same routine.
Exactly. Like, why does it have to be like that? And, you know, as a fractional CXO, and I do CFO, I do CIO role, I have one tech consultancy role. Sometimes I work on a Sunday evening from 5 to 9, but this means maybe I'm off on a Tuesday morning until midday. Maybe I want to do something, you know, in the morning because I want to go to the gym, I want to go there, I want to go to the market. So it's just choosing where you're going to do that piece of work if it's not time sensitive.
Yeah, you have flexibility, and then if you're consulting to a few different clients, as long as you can meet their needs, and like you said, if they're in different countries, then you can actually have probably more flexibility because you can schedule your day differently because of what time they're starting.
Absolutely.
And then where you are in Thailand, you're probably central to a bit of everything.
Yes.
Yeah, where down here in Australia, it's like 17 hours to like the west coast of America. It's quite a gap.
You're like the global day starts with you guys, I think.
I think New Zealand's first, and then,
Vanuatu, New Zealand.
Oh, yeah, them too. But yeah, I find trouble just being down here, having to speak to sometimes people in Europe. If it's in England or Portugal, it's all right, 12 hours difference is a challenge.
It's a bit difficult.
Speaking to someone in Chile before, and that was a pain trying to find a time that worked.
I can imagine.
But then, the West Coast is either really late or really early, so it's hard. But yeah, you're a bit more flexible, and then having that flexibility does help either an organization as well, because all right, you can get a task done at night when you're not operating anymore, to come in the morning and something's ready.
Yeah, and Anthony, you know, I even know people, which is obviously not ideal, but who are based in the Philippines. They service exclusively customers in the US. So they choose to work during night hours. I think they do, let's say, one particular gentleman I'm partnering with. So he starts his workday, I think, around 5, 6 p.m. local time. he goes until 3, 4, 5 a.m. his time, then he sleeps and moves on with his day. So whatever fits, basically.
Just like doing night shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an extension of that company. So
Correct.
how do you see that a company would bring in many or multiple fractional roles at a time, or is it just depending on their needs and trying to solve one problem? Otherwise, it becomes a bit too much going on for them to manage.
I think it can be multiple fractional roles at the time, but it really depends again on the size of the company. Again, maybe bigger companies have a bit more flexibility to bring people on. And we talk about fractional, we talk about effectively part-time work, like consultants type of work. Maybe a bit more flexibility. Having said that, I am currently working with a fairly new startup type of company. 100% employees are remote. There is no such thing as office. And that company has achieved, if I do a bit of a comparison, about 40% of saving in terms of their operational expenses by not having this type of, physical office, not having coffee machine, not having to pay for internet. Obviously, they compensate employees to a certain extent for maybe VPN or whatever they need to have access to. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can even build a startup company with 100% people being remote. And I guess in a way you see that as well, because you guys are working remote. I mean, fine, you are all in Australia,
remote.
but
it's been almost since COVID. Yeah, so it's been 4.5 years now, completely remote.
So what's your experience with that? What's your sort of view?
It was a bit of a transition initially, but we were working from home here and there, but we didn't think we could do completely remote.
Yeah.
For workshops, I prefer it because then I have the meetings fully recorded. I know who said what when, and I can go back over notes and get more detail. In person, it's, all right, I've set up a Teams call on my laptop and I'm recording the meeting, but everyone is coming through my voice. So then the notes get harder to follow.
Yeah.
For that purpose, I find, completely remote is much better. But we still call each other every day. We talk, there's meetings online. Like, it hasn't been a problem with the type of work we do. Yeah,
I agree. And I would also say maybe the tools that you use in 100% remote work environment are a bit different. I found using Teams or Microsoft products really useful, but now with this 100% remote company, Notion has become like #1 platform, and I absolutely love it. Slack and Notion, effectively. And I don't know why. Maybe being on Microsoft products all of my life, I've just maybe gotten
had enough.
Tired of them. But point is, collaboration tools are really important when you work in a remote job or when you are some sort of fractional part-time. You really have to make an effort to collaborate, make sure that you ask the questions, you are visible. I don't think it's the best when you are just completely introverted in your own role. You don't check in every now and then. I think once a day, having a check-in with your team is bare minimum as a fractional or as a remote employee.
Oh, you need to be involved. They need to remember you're there. Otherwise, you just get disregarded for things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but in that, having those tools, even when we were in the office, we would send messages on Teams. So then a decision was captured.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you wouldn't remember why someone said something, or so. We would have all of us in the office having headphones on and just chatting to each other on Teams, even though we were sitting next to each other.
Sense. That makes perfect sense, yeah. And especially when you work even a slightly regulated role, which I have done, most of my career, you have to have audit trail. You have to have audit trail. And these days, it doesn't have to be formal document. Message is completely fine. This is an audit trail this year, this day and age.
Yeah, and that's a different set of requirements, again, having that regulation aspect there, which a lot of people wouldn't be exposed to what that means as well, and how that dictates what you need to do.
Yeah.
Do you see that there's a challenge being at the fractional level with that, with sort of that regulated entities and having to be audited, or is it the companies just have to have the right processes in place?
Great question. And I would say, I think the regulatory environment is not ready to embrace fractional roles. Again, thinking in Singapore context, where I've lived for 13 years, 14 years. When you are in a regulated role, there is a requirement for you to, they don't say actually working full time, but they put limitations on what you can do. For instance, if you take a regulated role, you can't do anything else, so you have to get central bank's approval. And again, it becomes a problem even from the perspective if you have an employment pass in certain countries. Again, Singapore is a great example. When you have employment pass issued by one company, you are not allowed to work for any other company in that country. You can do offshore work technically, but you have to declare from tax perspective, so on and so forth. So I would say the regulatory side probably has not managed to catch up yet. I see changes happening, and also from the perspective of accommodating digital nomads or fractional people. You see changes in tax law, you see changes in immigration law. Currently, I'm based in Thailand. Thailand has been very progressive in terms of bringing in digital nomads. Just recently, they have introduced a new visa type, which is targeted at digital nomads, or they call it remote workers. So I think it's becoming, again, slowly but surely. And hopefully within a few years, we actually have a tax system, global tax system, that supports working in one country, working in another country. You don't have to count number of days, how many days I've stayed here, where I'm going to pay tax. So it takes a bit of time, but I think the change is happening.
So, yeah, because I know there is a lot of issues on the tax. So there's some countries, it doesn't matter where you're earning the money, they'll still tax you in your home country, effectively.
Correct. America is one of them.
Is it? Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if it was America. I didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
So that the visa in Thailand, that's the one that lets you stay there for 10 years as a remote worker. Is that right?
Now the remote worker visa is for 5 years, but for 10 years it's a different visa type. So Thailand has all sorts of visas, but this particular, it's called DTV, Destination Thailand Visa. One of the best Thailand has introduced. I would say globally one of the best that has been introduced. Very easy to get. If you have a remote job, you can prove that you earn an income, and you can sustain yourself for the next few years. They'll give you the visa without a problem.
Yeah, and if you can earn money in US dollars or Singaporean dollars and live in Thailand, it's going to be a great life to have there.
Exactly, yeah.
So how do you see sort of the future transitioning, where you've got those startups that are completely remote, you've got corporates that may not know how to handle that remoteness, and then you've got the fractional people coming in at all the different levels. How do you sort of see it all meshing and playing out?
I think, like with any transition, it's probably going to be a messy at first. I would say the biggest shift that has to happen, in my view, Anthony, is with the mindset. With the mindset that, if you are working, you have to work from 9 to 5, and that equals full productivity, maximum output. I have worked in the corporate world long enough to know that a lot of the people don't do much work. They'll do the bare minimum to show that they've done something, and they're completely okay with, sitting, doing something, chit chat, playing a game. And I don't want to, cast any shadows on any organization. I'm just saying it's common. Human nature, we tend to be a bit lazy. So being in the office full time doesn't mean that you actually do the work. So I think the shift in mindset has to happen of those decision makers who outsource roles or who make decisions of the roles. Like, do I want to have a person sitting in front of me who may or may not give the full output, or rather have a fractional person, maybe who sits offshore, whose KPIs and whose deliverables I can actually check much more, and I tend to check much more because that's the nature of consultancy. You have to submit your worksheet, you're brought in for a project, there are KPIs almost every week. So I think once that shift happens, and I think it will happen more in those more progressive type of companies, startup companies maybe first, and maybe then we will see shift in bigger tech companies, which is already happening again. And I think the last layer or last shift will happen with financial services. It may never happen, or government services, actually. I shall take that back. Government services is the last
I think
to
will probably be in person citizens
You're not
only.
going to have a tax authority sitting offshore. So I think it's a gradual change, but I think, like I said, it will be messy at first. Maybe there will be a few mess ups. Maybe there will be a few bad experiences, people getting jobs that are not actually equipped to do the particular project. But at the same time, then it's really easy to get rid of that person as well, right? You can immediately switch and get somebody who may be better equipped. And I just reflect on my own experience. I use Upwork quite a bit. Like, despite having a let's call it fractional role, I still outsource some of the tasks because I do a bit of an arbitrage, having my access to clients versus what I don't need to do myself. And I've had experiences of people not being able to deliver at the level that I expected them. And you just cancel the contract and you find somebody else, and it takes you an hour maximum. So I think, although there are hiccups along the way, it's almost a startup way. You try, you test it out, doesn't work, you reiterate. Doesn't work, you try again, you reiterate. So until you figure it out. So I think what companies need to become are more nimble, more flexible. The world is changing so fast. The labor laws, the companies will have to do exactly the same.
Yeah, and I think it's having that, being able to monitor and change quickly and learn from the mistake.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, then you're going to be in trouble. With sort of, I don't know if it's Upwork, but I know there are certain systems like platforms like that that have like the monitoring tools where you have to have your screen recorder on and they're monitoring everything you're doing as you're doing the task. Have you been exposed to anything like that yet? Or it's probably not at the fractional role. It's more like just menial tasks.
I haven't experienced that and limited visibility, but I do know that there are banks that use exactly the same. And again, I think back on those outsourced or offshore jobs at Bank of America. I do know that there were service centers in India that were massive. Maybe we talk about 12 floors, hundreds of people each floor dedicated to a different bank. That's how it works there. Literally like all the banks have put people into the same building. And over there, every single move was recorded on the screen. So as a worker there, limited option to browse, I don't know, Amazon or news.
You're in trouble.
Exactly. You have to work the entire time.
There probably will be a rise in that kind of monitoring software, especially at this like outsourcing role.
Yeah.
Because we've had startups that have dealt with it and they're like, oh yeah, I was watching their recordings last night and seeing that they were coding. Not that they knew what they were doing, they just could see that something was happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe
peace of mind.
Absolutely. And I would just say maybe I've been lucky and blessed with the clients that I work currently that I haven't had the need for such recording. But again, a lot of the deliverables, at least in my experience, are very easy to track. Like, have you done this? Are the financial reports ready or not? Have we reported management accounts or not? It's like a very binary outcome. It's either yes or no.
Yeah, the experience I've seen, it's people who don't know software or don't know how to manage a software project are getting developers overseas to develop something. They just want to see that something's happening.
Exactly.
They're not knowing how to monitor not knowing how to manage the people properly. So they're not getting the outcome they're expecting, even though they're seeing something happening.
Spot on.
Yeah, that's like the reason those mouse jigglers were invented, just so to your employer, it looks like you're doing something and your mouse is just moving on its own.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. But then you also get sort of, there are a lot of people that just try to slack off, but then like in the corporate, it's not 9 to 5, it's 9 to 9 a lot of times. Like in your experience, how many jobs have you had that actually stuck to that sort of time?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in, I would say, teams, been part of organizations. Let's say investment banking is a great example. It wasn't even 9 to 9. It was 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. effectively type of job. Of course, that was intense, working on some sort of project or delivering something to the client. That doesn't also mean you work intensely this entire time, right? You have to be available in the office because that's the culture of that particular team or the organization. Doesn't mean you work the entire time. Sure, you had like intense bursts of work getting something done, but then you had maybe also 2-hour lunch sometimes. So yeah, I 100% agree that working in the company, physically being present doesn't mean that you get the max output. There's a lot of chit chat happening in the pantry. I've seen people playing games in the toilet stall. You hear like Candy Crush sound coming next. So I would say my efficiency levels actually, rather I feel that I have become much more structured with my own work because now I have 3 clients. I divide my day according to the deliverables, the hours, which means I have to be ruthless when stopping one project and moving on to the next. And it means there's much more management of the client because everybody expects, maybe you can do a little bit of more for my project, maybe a little bit of more for mine. I cannot, unfortunately, because everybody has to be treated equally. Yeah,
you've got your KPIs you have to meet and then you got to stick to them. And I think you're running more like a small business now, managing clients.
Yeah.
When you're at a company, you can take your time, but it's different when you have to try and find where the money's coming from.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when you're working for someone else, you've got your salary, your wage, and then you can slack off here or there. When I do that, I feel like I'm ripping myself off. That's the mentality I have. If I'm not working, I'm ripping myself off.
Yeah. When I don't do something, I almost calculate what is that hour of being lazy going to cost me and what can I afford for that particular hour of working. So it's become a bit of like, it's maybe not the healthiest way of approaching this, but yeah.
Or it's more, I think, when can I make up that hour?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the work still has to get done, even if you're not doing it. There's no one there to rely on, or you're falling back on yourself, so there's no option.
Yeah, and what I've come to do these days, Anthony, is that I've almost like segregated my tasks, stuff that has to be done and stuff that I enjoy doing. And that happens in a corporate as well, right? There's always stuff that has to be done, but you don't like it, but there's stuff that's maybe a bit more enjoyable. So I leave the stuff that I enjoy doing, maybe for like when I watch a movie on a Sunday evening, I put movie in the background, I get my stuff done. But when it's this highly focused Excel work or some sort of analysis, has to be Monday, has to be Tuesday, sound blocking headphones are on, so it's super targeted and, just getting it done.
Yeah, you have to when you have to focus, it's very different. But it's understanding that breakup and planning your time properly. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll just get overwhelmed and inundated.
I agree. And
then having those expectations from certain clients, they're expecting you to do a little bit extra. When we very first started, I can't remember what book I read, but inside the book was a quote that I remember was, "You're better off working for free than at a discount." Because when you're working for free, people don't expect too much.
Yes.
When you're at a discount, they expect the same.
Yes.
So you're then, eventually you end up getting frustrated or you get annoyed at that client because you're not earning what you should be for the same amount of time that you could be doing for someone else, and they've got their very high expectations.
Spot on. And again, this is another interesting mindset shift, I would say, I've had to do for myself, is also pricing my hour. Oh man, that was a difficult one, because I'm like,
I can imagine.
Should I really ask so much? It's a bit like a bit of imposter syndrome, which is very common among women, and also like being really firm with expectations, like, this is the deadline when I can deliver the project. Like, I can't do it any faster. Coming into year end, right? There is a client who has expectations to raise money because they want to launch a product next year. I'm sorry, but there's no money raising happening in December. I mean, maybe for a week, 2 people are in the office. After that, everyone's already having eggnog, right? Like, let's be really realistic here. I think that has been a much more, again, ruthless with communication, ruthless with expectations, ruthless with pricing the hour, and also telling that, hey guys, sorry, I'm going to be off from the 12th of December onwards. It's my Christmas break. Yeah. Oh, but we pay you. I'm like, yeah, great. We can adjust the hours, but I'm going to be off.
Yeah. So have you found that to be one of the biggest challenges compared to your corporate experience is you get to dictate, but you have to be firm. Whereas in your corporate, this is what I need to buy and you don't have a say.
Correct. And I don't know if it's, again, some sort of female thing. I don't know if men experience the same. I've only read women-specific literature on this, about this imposter thing. It's almost like I don't have the right to dictate the terms. Like, I have to be grateful, whatever is given to me. So maybe I shouldn't be so picky. But I also find the more I dictate, or not to dictate, not the best word, maybe the more I express my availability and my boundaries, people tend to respect it. So it's a bit of a learning curve. But yeah, I agree. There was a bit of uncomfortable feeling inside me when I first started communicating.
I think that imposter syndrome happens to everyone, but I have read that it happens a lot more to women. Yeah. I think there's always things you don't know. It just depends how confident you are in being able to sell it.
100%.
I think that's all it is.
The problem solving is another aspect that comes in here. And I have a great experience delivering a tech project to a Singapore-based fund manager, right? I am not a tech person. I'm not claiming by any means I'm a tech person. But I had to build a piece of Python code. I used ChatGPT. It took me a few hours to, parse myself through how to do it, what prompts to give. I got the code done. Yep. So it's a problem solving. Again, coming back to the same full circle. How do you apply yourself to a problem?
It's knowing and having the confidence that you'll be able to figure it out.
Exactly.
Worst case, you can probably outsource it to someone on their task if you had a plan B. But having the confidence in your ability to try and figure it out and attempt it. Yeah. And if it didn't work, you learned something along the way, which I'm sure then the next one that comes along, you'll be able to apply that.
Absolutely. And one thing I did do was I got somebody from Upwork to review what I had done. I wanted to make sure that my deliverable came with the highest quality. So what I had done myself, obviously, was a bit of a learning curve for me. Again, skill acquisition, it's important. Quick tangent. Another really important skill to acquire is knowing how to prompt chatbots. This is, in my view, one of the most important things for the next 5 years. How you ask a question, how you frame the question, how to build custom bots. This is by far the thing that's going to make all the difference. And then once this deliverable was done, I want to make sure it's the best quality. So I found the best developer on Upwork, got them to review, gave stamp of approval. They adjusted, optimized a little bit, but said, it works. And if it ain't broken, so.
And that's what you need. That's just something that works at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If it's efficient, even better.
Yeah.
I think, that what you're touching on there with the how to prompt is how, like the analogy is how to Google.
Yeah.
I'm sure in every place you worked at, there was someone who knew how to Google if that was not you, but there was always someone who could find something when you couldn't.
Yeah.
That was my superpower in the office. I was someone who could find something on the internet if someone else couldn't.
And I can vouch for that, having been in meetings with you. But I agree with you 100%. It's not about what you know, is knowing how to search for something that you don't know, because we have this amazing computer in our pocket, right? Most people, they don't even know how to properly get information, or how to prompt Google, how to bring Boolean searches and stuff. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, I'll be in meetings and I'm Googling and coming up with ideas as people are talking to contribute to the conversation. I can probably carry half a conversation and half a Google. It looks smart. It doesn't mean I'm doing everything at the best ability.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So if anyone wants to reach out and find out more about what you do, Kaia, and some of your fractional services, how can they do that?
The best way is LinkedIn. I'm sure you're going to drop my LinkedIn in the comments.
Yep.
So Kaia,
it'll all be in the show notes.
Parv, and I'm blessed with a very unique name. Thank you, Mom. So when you Google Kaia Parv, you probably find my my Instagram, my LinkedIn, my webpage, which is under construction. Gonna change that a little bit. But yeah, happy to be in contact with people, exchange ideas, and hear other people's fractional experience as well.
Yep. And just before we wrap up, I'll ask one more question because it just came to mind, which is, if there is someone who's had a similar journey to yourself, what's some key advice that you can give them? We'll leave on that note.
Key advice is to be shameless in promoting yourself. There's nobody else who's going to sell you any better than yourself. Be brave, put yourself out there, and I think opportunities will come. Yep,
and I agree with all of that. It's, and having the courage to try is probably the first thing, because most people are scared to promote themselves.
Yeah, and the worst case you're going to get is just no. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. The worst they can say. All right, Kaia, it's been a pleasure to chat to you today. Thanks for your time, and I wish you all the luck.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.